All right. This is your man, Byron A. Lloyd. I'm back in full effect in the flesh. I got my conspiracy buddy, Lisa Reeves. Hello, Lisa.
Hello, Byron.
Man, let me see, move my mic when I get better sound. But anyway, I got us some, this is going to be cool. Look, I got us a little bit of music for the little conspiracy corner and everything. It's pretty awesome. You know what I mean?
Music now, huh?
Yeah, I done got some tricks up my sleeve now, man. I'll go ahead and kick it off. You ready? Here we go. Conspiracy corner. Hey, we turned on my echo, so it should sound pretty cool. Do you like it?
I like that. I like that music. Perfect for conspiracy corner.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty sweet too, man. So you've read 3 books. How many conspiracy are you?
I've read 3 books over the weekend about the Paul MCcartney death hoax. You know, that's what they're all under, is pretty much hoax. I tell you what made me want to do it is because I Googled the top 10 conspiracies. And by the way, I did switch from Bing to Google now, so I'm not Binging anything.
Yeah, Bing sucks, man. I could have told you that.
But like the number 4 or 5 conspiracy with Paul MCcartney is dead, and I was like, what? You know, I was familiar with all of them, but I really didn't know anything about that. I'd heard it mentioned a couple of times through the albums, you know, when they were walking across Abbey Road.
Right.
Front cover of one of the Abbey Road album.
Right. And John Lennon, this is one of the conspiracies on the Abbey Road cover.
And all the little clues that they had. Because if you look at a Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band now,
there's a bunch of stuff in there. We're going to get to that, though.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. But for those who don't know, in 1966, about 5 o'clock in the morning, Paul MCcartney allegedly left Abbey Road Studios and killed himself. And MI5 allegedly, I've heard different versions, MI5 or somebody got a body double, this dude named Campbell. And he won a lookalike contest, and he become Paul MCcartney, except the only difference is he's like 2 inches taller, and they had to give him some plastic surgery because his teeth and his ears are different. They're making a big deal about his ears online. But what's crazy is that, man, I watched so much stuff. Man, I've listened to so many Beatle records backwards today. It's supposed to have hidden messages in it, tell you that Paul McCartney's dead. You know what I mean? The big one is the one that says, what is it? The dead man?
Strawberry Fields?
No, yeah, because at the end it says, I bury Paul, but John Lennon swears he said cranberry sauce. Right. Because the original lyrics for that song were about breakfast, were about eating breakfast. So it don't sound that crazy. Here, I'll find it right here. But
and cranberry sauce is different over in England than it is here. They, So.
Right. Well, the big 2 albums that they really freaked out about was Abbey Road cover and the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Band cover. And we'll get to Sgt. Pepper's here in a second because there's a lot of stuff in there that is kind of freaky. But I got something new that that you might not know that I don't know how edited it is. But I got Paul McCartney's ex-wife a few years ago. I saw a video of her on one of these Entertainment Tonight type love shows. Did you see that? She's talking about she left Paul because he didn't tell the truth, and if people found out, they'd freak out because they couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
Right. That was kind of. I will admit that was kind of trippy.
That was kind of freaky.
Right.
If I can interject real quick back to what you were saying about the William Campbell.
Yeah.
There was also who they call William Shepherd.
Right. Billy Shears too.
Shepherd.
Right.
And Billy Shepherd was also Billy Shears.
Right.
Because if you think of it, Shepherd, Shears, and there's a little interesting story about that. And I will say real quickly, I don't really know what I think about this. There is some interesting fact or interesting things that occurred with like the professor, but we'll get to that in Miami. But
I guess I don't know about that.
I just don't know. Oh, you don't know about the professor in Miami?
No, I guess I don't. We'll have to get to that. I thought I was going to blow your mind with some new stuff. You're going to blow my mind. Awesome. But yeah, what tripped me out is that, like I said, and at the beginning of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band, he screams Billy's here, which if you put it together, it comes out Billy Shears. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But hey, I will tell you
And,
something real quick.
and
For
you know,
oh, go ahead.
go ahead.
Well, I was going to tell you.
He also had Billy Shears had a band
Right.
at the same time playing in Liverpool.
Right.
And was it Billy Shears and the Popper Pots or something? It was really Sergeant. I mean, it was really weird,
Right.
that he had a band and he was basically a session musician who could play everything.
Right.
And then what you read about we'll call him the original Paul, that he was self-taught and could only play by ear.
Right.
And couldn't read music, but who knows?
Right, and I was going to tell you real quick that, which we're just going to get into the details, but I want to say, everybody, that was a kick-ass debut theme song. Debuting that theme song. That theme song is awesome. But,
I give it I agree, that's a good theme song.
Yeah, that's D. Allen White. That's Douglas Wilhite, Dougie Wilhite, my brother from another mother. He's a songwriter in Nashville. He crushed it on the theme song, I thought. It was awesome myself.
Oh, Miss Phyllis's brother.
Right. Everybody should have a theme song, and I got my own theme song. Now I can just put it in like an MP3 player, and I can walk around and listen to my own theme song all the time, like my theme song through life. That'd be awesome. Anyway, but there's I didn't want to believe it. You know what I mean? We're going to do Conspiracy Corner, at least once or twice a month. And I didn't want to believe it, but I don't know how they edited it, but when I saw, Heather, what's her face? What was her name? The last chick he's married to?
Heather Mills.
Heather Mills, right. Oh, Peg Leg Heather. Anyway, when I saw old girl, that blew my mind because they said originally that's why they wouldn't tell anybody that Paul was dead, because there were so many teenage girls fanatical about the Beatles that there'd be suicides and people would just lose their stuff, man. They'd just lose their mind. And I saw where a cop, and this is one of the great rock and roll quotes of all time, a New York cop said when they played at the Met Stadium or played in the Yankee Stadium or whatever in New York, that the girls were revved up in such a frenzy that there was a river of urine from them getting so excited and peeing themselves. And I was like,
I've read that.
I was like, wow.
Pass out. I mean,
that's awesome though. It's
girls, it was literally a frenzy.
Right. That's kind of disgusting that it's urine, but to imagine that you could get so many girls whipped up in frenzy, their bladders just collapse. You know what I mean? They just can't control themselves. Being a Beatle must have been awesome for a while. You know what I mean? First couple of years.
Another little thing, since you were talking about Heather Mills.
Yeah.
He did not have a prenup with her.
Yeah, she took him to the cleaners for like $200 or $300 million.
And don't you find that rather unusual that someone of his standing
right.
He's supposedly worth over $1 billion.
Oh yeah, he's a billionaire, easy. Just on the Beatles catalog alone.
That would not sign a prenup with her.
And there's some more unusual stuff. Like I said, I'm still, and most of these conspiracies I don't believe, 98% of them. But man,
I agree with you. I don't want to believe this one.
Right, I don't want to believe, but there's some stuff that'll make you think. I ain't gonna lie. You know what I mean? The Heather Mills.
That's what I agreed with you about.
Right, the Heather Mills deal is what really freaked me out, because they said that's why they wouldn't tell everybody that Paul McCartney was dead, because teenage girls around the world would kill themselves and freak out. And she basically said the same thing in this interview. And look, I can play it, and we can hear what she says, because it's just a little quick one. Let's see, where's that? But she basically says the same thing, but there's an edit, there's a cut in the middle of it, so you don't know if it's being, I'd like to find the whole interview and watch it, but you know what I mean? Because you can tell there's a cut in the middle of it, and you don't know what question they ask her. You know what I'm saying? Oh, that's the wrong one. But let's see. But we'll get into it. You can tell me about the professor, and I got all the little deals about the covers, which are crazy. Now, the cover of Abbey Road, the big deal is there was if you ever look at it, it's John Lennon wearing a white suit, then it's Ringo wearing an all-black suit, then it's Paul McCartney wearing a suit and barefooted, and then behind him is George Harrison dressed in all denim. And they basically say that John Lennon's the preacher, Ringo's the mortician, Paul McCartney's dead, and the gravedigger is George Harrison. That's what that's supposed to represent. Because there was some rumor that in Italy, I've heard two different versions, that Italy, they bury people barefooted, and in England, they bury people barefooted. But I looked it up, and they said it wasn't true, that they don't bury people barefooted in England or Italy. So that might just be an urban myth. But
Well, and also in one of the videos, they're all wearing white tuxedos, and each one of them has a red carnation.
except for him, he's got a
Paul
black
is
one.
wearing a black carnation.
Right. Just like in the also in the which we'll get to Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band, because there's a bunch of conspiracy crap in that cover.
There's a ton of those on the front of there.
Right, in the inside
One
of it.
thing I'd like to say,
Right.
the Beatles never really did anything to dispel these rumors.
Well, which Paul McCartney kind of did on David Letterman. Did you see that clip? But then at the end,
Well, I did see that, but he really said...
At the end, he said, "There's two Paul McCartneys. I'm him." Right.
Yeah, he says there's, maybe I'm the one that took over the...
Right, he's saying...
Or he says, he doesn't dispel it.
No, we can play that too.
Be.
We can play that too. But, let me find Heather Mills real quick. But Heather Mills is the one that really freaked me out, because after I went through all this, and I'd done probably 2 or 3 hours of research on it, and after I went through all this, it freaked me out because let's see, because of what she said. That's what tripped me out. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Man, I can't believe I can't find it now. I found it so easy a while ago. But she basically says that she broke up Paul McCartney because he's not truthful, and that she said, "I can't say nothing. I got to protect myself," and that if people found out, they would freak out. People couldn't handle it. Basically, what she said.
Yeah, and the way she goes on about it, you're like, what in the world? I mean,
I think this is it right
she's
here.
saying it's going to affect everyone all over the world.
And I will say nothing. Something so awful happened. Someone I'd loved for a long time, I found out, had betrayed me immensely. And I don't mean infidelity or anything like that. Like, beyond belief.
So somebody betrayed you, and of course everyone here is going to believe that that's Paul McCartney. In a way, not infidelity, that is so much deeper than that. It wounded you and pushed you towards suicide.
Yeah, it did. And he knows that.
So it's Paul.
But I've got to protect myself. I have to protect myself. People don't want to know what the truth is because they could never, ever handle it. They would be too devastated.
Okay, that was it, but that's pretty good, because she basically said it's Paul McCartney, and he didn't cheat on her.
Oh, yeah.
But he wasn't honest with her, and she basically says people couldn't handle it, and that's the most intriguing. That's the most.
Yeah, and she basically said people don't want to know the truth.
Right, and that was the most intriguing thing I've seen. You know what I mean? That was intriguing. But we can get into the albums, like I said. Now I want you to tell me about the Professor, but like I said, here's what it says about the Abbey Road cover art. It says the cover art of the Beatles' last recorded album is supposed to be blatant proof of Paul's death. Like, first of all, let me say that Paul McCartney had an Aston Martin. I've heard people call it Austin Healey, but it was a convertible Aston Martin. It was crashed.
He actually had 3 of them.
Right, it was crashed, but allegedly it was a Arabic dude that was going to get drugs for him, was making a dope run in his car. You know what I mean? And that's who got killed. That's you know what I'm saying? That's supposed to be the legit story. You know what I mean? But it says the cover art, but you're right. It says the cover art of the Beatles' last recorded album is supposed to be blatant proof of Paul's death. The iconic walk across the zebra crossing is meant to be Paul's funeral procession, with George as the scruffy denims as the gravedigger, barefoot Paul as the corpse, Ringo as the pallbearer, the mortician, all in black, and an all-white John as the preacher. Then it said if you zoom in, and the car license says this, the car license reads 28 if, and Paul McCartney would have been 28 years old if he would have lived past that. You know what I mean? But it also says there's a LMW too on the license plate that stands for Linda McCartney Weeps. But I can't. But I saw a blow up with the license plate, and it's on that Beetle, and it does say LMW 28IF. You know what I'm saying? And it didn't look like it was Photoshop. But Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band is just crammed full of free. It's one of the first of all, it's one of the most iconic album covers of all time. You'd agree with that, wouldn't you? It's a famous album cover.
Oh, I would. Most
Yeah,
definitely.
and when as a kid you see it and you're like, man, that's awesome looking. You get into it, and you see all the famous people standing behind them, and It's just amazing. It's an amazing album because that was the first album where they broke away from them teeny bopper hits and started playing the spacey, dopey, trippy stuff. You know what I mean?
If you notice, they changed totally
Right.
from 1967.
Right. They stopped playing them teeny bopper hits and started playing real ethereal, deep, trippy kind of hippie music. You know what I mean? Rock and roll, hippie rock and roll.
And they say that kind of shows also that the real Paul McCartney,
right.
was-
That's
or the
why they
new Paul
changed it because
McCartney.
it was a fake Paul McCartney. And that's the kind of music he played. And they make a big deal about his ears. You know what I mean? About the difference in the ears.
His ears and his height.
And his nose, right. And his eye color, too. But it says the album.
Oh, his eye color was a big deal.
Right. It says the album that.
Because
Go ahead.
they say that, the original Paul, we'll call him, had, chocolate brown eyes.
Right.
And the new Paul had hazel green eyes.
Right. They were greenish. Right. But, like I said, man, I was convinced this was total BS until I saw that Heather Mills deal, and it kind of threw me off. You know what I mean? I ain't gonna lie, but it says the album that introduced Billy Shears was bound to be a treasure trove of visual clues, especially considering the famous, complicated cover art. Some clues, quote unquote, are more convincing than others, but there are a lot of them. A floral wreath spells out Beatles with a bass guitar. And this is true. There's a bass guitar and flowers. A left-handed bass guitar, and Paul McCartney played the left-handed bass guitar, 4-string bass. But it's only got 3 strings in it. They say the reason it's only got 3 strings is because it represents the 3 real living Beatles. Right?
And there's also a little wrecked Austin Martin on there.
Right, there's a little doll's lap.
On it.
Right, there's a little doll.
With
it's hard to see. I've never noticed it before until because there's so much to take in. There's just so much going on this cover, and like I said, you get into it, you see there's a little Aston Martin in the dead looking doll's lap that's sitting in a chair on the right. But it says that there's I know it's a big deal. There's an open palm behind Paul's head, and there's several different albums.
Yeah.
That's got that picture with an open palm behind his head, and they say that's a symbol for death
and that's supposed to stand for death or something like that.
Right, they say it stands for death in a bunch of cultures. Then I've also read that that's the last position a priest's hand is when he gives you the last rites. That's the last position his hand
and
is
if you look
in.
at some of the people that's in that picture, they're all, passed away, of course.
Right, and a lot of them was in car wrecks. Yeah. John Wayne, Fatty Arbuckle, and a lot of them was in car wrecks.
So, like I said, they don't help dispel.
No, they don't. They don't at all. Jane Mansfield's in there, and she died in a car wreck. He allegedly got decapitated. Jane Mansfield's in here, and she got decapitated in a car wreck. You know what I mean? But just like they say, if you hold the album cover up to a mirror and you look at the drum says IX I die, which basically says I won, IX, he died.
11-9.
He died. Right.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? But it's Roman numerals. It says I won, IX, he died. But it says he's also wearing this.
And also,
go ahead.
Also, too, if you notice, there's also the members of the band that look like they were from 67, early 60s.
Right.
And you can see that their height, Paul is the correct height. Because he was,
5'11".
Tall.
Right, he was 5'11". Right.
And the old Paul was supposedly like 5'9".
No, the original Paul was 5'11". The old Paul, he was supposed to be. I think they said Ringo was taller. George Harrison was taller than Paul, but in the picture on the album cover on Sgt. Pepper's, Paul's the tallest one, and he wasn't the tallest one in the band. Because I saw a little card with him back in the 60s in a little video clip. They asked him how old he was and how big he was, and he said 5'11". But there's a bunch of clues.
Well, everything that I'd read, he and George Harrison were the same height.
Right.
He was around 5'9", 5'10". But this new Paul, that's why they never stood together anymore.
Or played live, right.
Well, played live, yeah, because a lot of people don't realize they never played live again.
Right.
After their tour to America.
Right. And I never really paid attention to it, but where all the floor arrangement is, it looks like a mound, like it's a grave, and it never occurred to me that it could be a grave. And I've heard this rumor a long time ago.
And apparently, it is a
Right. Let me tell you something else that I've only seen one place. It says Beatles spelled out in flowers, but there's a little circle over here. And they say if you take it away, it says Lesso. And it says the Beatles bought an island called Lesso. And if you do something the right way, it says meet me at Lesso. Like Paul McCartney.
And also, if you look at the bass in flowers spells out Paul.
Right. It spells out Paul. And it's, like I said, it's missing a string. But here, I'll read what it says right here. Let's see. It says there's a floral wreath that spells out the Beatles with a bass guitar with only 3 tuning pegs, indicating that only 3 Beatles were left alive. There's an open palm behind Paul's head, a symbol of death in some societies, and a tiny Aston Martin representing the car he was driving in the apparent crash. There's a picture of 4 early Beatles, and they seem to be looking into a grave. Meanwhile, inside, Paul wears an armband that has the initials OPD, said to stand for officially pronounced dead. I've also seen where it says old Paul is dead. So I've seen 2 different things with that. And on the back, Paul has got his back turned to in the inside jacket cover. They're all facing forward in the picture. And Paul's got his back turned, but George Harrison's got his thumb up. And his thumb is pointing to a lyric inside the album cover. And the lyric says, Wednesday morning at 5 o'clock as the day begins. And it was allegedly at 5 o'clock in the morning on Wednesdays when Paul died.
5 o'clock when he had that wreck.
Right.
Is that the album cover, Byron, that has the fake mustache on it?
Yeah, he's supposed to be wearing a fake mustache. Yeah. After 66, he started having this porno mustache until the mid-70s.
Yeah.
And people said it was fake. It looks real to me.
Because
But
accordingly, the new Paul had, he did resemble the old Paul McCartney. I'm going to call this new Paul
Fall.
Billy Shepherd.
They call him Fall with
Fall.
an F.
Call him Fall.
Yeah, they call him Fall with an F.
But he had injections and, some plastic surgery.
To make him look more like Paul,
Apparently
right.
He was having, and they put the fake mustache because apparently he wasn't healed good enough over his upper lip.
Right, he had a scar, and they make a big deal about his lips being different than the original Paul, too. You know what I mean? Which is, like I said, and these are all pretty intriguing. It's all pretty intriguing. Plus, like I said, Revolution 9, the song, they say if you play it backwards, it says, Turn Me On Dead Man. And there also says when you play it backwards, that song backwards, you hear Paul screaming, and you hear a car crash, and you hear flames. Right?
And there's also the best book, if anyone wants to read, it's called Turn Me On Dead Man.
Oh, really?
And, it has footnotes. It has everything.
Right, or if you got ADHD.
The rumor really blew up in 1969 when someone called a Michigan radio station.
Right. And I listened to that broadcast.
Asking, I think the guy was Larry Monroe.
I got this video clip right here. I got a 7-minute video clip that's the best clip I've seen that tells you all the clues, tells you all the details, and I thought about playing 4 or 5 minutes of it because it really tells you what's going on.
Let's not forget, I want to touch on the professor, the Miami State University professor.
Yeah, I want to get to him. Hey, I definitely want to get to him in just a second. Let's see. I'll play a piece of this because I watched 20 videos, and like I said, if you got ADHD, go to YouTube if you don't want to read a book. But this is the best clip I've seen. I've watched at least 20 of them. He lines it out. So we'll listen to a piece of this real quick.
In Liverpool in 1960, one of the most influential bands of the era was formed, the Beatles. The Beatles consisted of John Lennon, Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr, and George Harrison. Today, the group is known as the best-selling music artists in the United States, and in 1984, they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Sadly, John Lennon was assassinated in 1980, and George Harrison died of lung cancer in 2011. The last 2 remaining Beatles are Ringo Starr and Paul McCartney. Or maybe not. On January 7th, 1967, the car belonging to Paul McCartney got into a car crash, and consequently, a few newspapers reported that he died. In actuality, Paul McCartney was never even in the car when it crashed, because he was at a party in Sussex. The person driving the car was Mohammed Hajij, who was using the car to bring drugs to the party that Paul McCartney was at. Naturally, a few rumors stating that Paul was dead began to spread, but they didn't make it too far. One thing that really secured this rumor was a song released in 1969 by Terry Knight named St. Paul. Some people believe that the song hinted at Paul McCartney's death, but it's more likely that the song was about how Knight believed that the Beatles would soon break up. Either way, we can't really make any conclusions based off of this, because the lyrics were very cryptic, so it really could have been interpreted as a bunch of different things. The actual first mention of the rumor...
Here he goes with all the rumors and the clues.
1969. The newspaper article was titled, "Is Beatle Paul McCartney Dead?" This article did not receive much attention, but later, something happened which really ignited the rumor. On October 12th of that year, the DJ of a Detroit radio station took a call from a college student named Tom Zarsky. Zarsky told the DJ everything about the Paul's Dead rumor, and as proof, told him to play Revolution No. 9 from the Beatles' White Album backwards. The DJ did so, and was very clearly able to hear the words, "Turn me on, dead man." Here is Revolution 9 played forward.
Number 9, number 9, number 9, number 9, number 9.
And here it is played backwards.
Turn me on, dead man. 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 Turn me on, dead man.
Now, normally when I hear people talking about hidden messages being played in songs, the messages are extremely difficult to hear, and I would have never known what the message was unless I was told. But for this one,
that is pretty clear.
I agree that it is very clear what it sounds like.
Oh yeah, very clear.
Turn me on, dead man. This is where the rumor really took off. Ever since the rumor took off, fans have been finding a bunch of signs which they believe indicate the death of Paul McCartney. Essentially, people believe that Paul McCartney died in the car crash on November 9th, but was replaced by the winner of a Paul McCartney lookalike contest named William Campbell, in order to save their career and not break the hearts of the fans. In addition to what was already said, there were more clues present. A couple clues were seen on the Beatles' 8th studio album cover. One of the first things that people have pointed out about this cover is how the floral arrangement seems as if it's for a funeral. They also note that in the bottom right corner, the flowers are in the form of a left-handed bass guitar, which is the instrument that Paul played. People also note that the flowers spell out Beatles, but the flowers at the end of it seem to form the letter O. So together, it would spell out B at Leso, which is the name of a Greek island that they supposedly bought. Some people speculate that this is the Beatles inviting fans who discovered Paul's death to the island. These points are pretty weak in my opinion. If you look closely at the rag doll on the cover, you can also see a toy Aston Martin convertible, which is the car that Paul supposedly died in. Another clue, which seems kind of cool, but it's also sort of a stretch, has to do with the drum in the center that says Lonely Hearts. If you bisect the Lonely Hearts, you'll get the phrase, I won, IX, he die. If I1 is 11, and IX is the Roman numeral for 9, then you could decode this as 11-9, he die, which would mean November 9th, he die, which is the day that the car crash happened. One of the final hints in the cover is that someone is raising their hand behind Paul, which in some religions is a symbol of death, or the guy could just be waving. There's also a few things people have noticed.
The Rob album, right in Abbey Road.
One of the images on the poster inside the album shows Paul McCartney laying in a tub of water. Some people think this looks like a decapitated head floating in blood. In addition, the song Glass Onion contains the lyrics, looking through a glass onion. According to the DJ that I mentioned earlier, the term glass onion was British slang for the handle of a casket, because in the 19th century, caskets had glass handles that looked like glass onions. Apparently, Paul is looking through this because he's dead. Finally, the cover of the Abbey Road album has been analyzed by supporters of the Paul is dead theory. So, in this picture, Paul is seen holding a cigarette with his right hand, even though he was left-handed. So this might indicate that the person in this picture is indeed not the real Paul. Lastly, this picture was supposedly taken at the area where the car crash happened. So, here's what I think of all this. I'm almost certain that Paul is not dead yet. I don't think the evidence is convincing enough.
Yeah, but like I said, that was all the clues. Plus, in the Revolver album, which Revolution No. 9's on, all the Beatles, there's a sketch of it, and all of them are looking forward except for him, and he's looking to the right, which they also say is because he's dead. But what were you saying about the professor?
There was a professor who in the 70s decided that he was going to dispel, this hoax and say, okay.
Right.
But he's a linguistic professor, and Miami State University. His name was Professor Oscar Tosi, and everyone's voice has markers just like your fingerprints.
Right.
You know, your voice is
it's unique
distinctively your own. It
right.
cannot match anyone else's.
Right, it's unique.
Well, after he did Paul's voice prior to 67, and then Paul's voice after 67, they did not match whatsoever.
Oh, I'm about to check that out. I ain't
And
seen that.
He tried many different clips from prior to 67 to after 67.
Really?
And he came out and said, I cannot dispel this. Because he said, your voice marker is distinctively your own.
Right.
And the voice from prior to 67 does not match the voice of Paul McCartney today.
Really? See, I guess...
And also, if you noticed, in late 69, they did disband. And they didn't announce it till January
of 1970. Right.
And, but they had, all their problems started after 67.
Right.
For many years, Paul and John did not speak at all.
Right. Yeah. For many years, right before his death, they started talking again, I believe. After he put up that one album.
Paul McCartney took legal action to terminate or just dissolve Apple Records.
Right.
This was in the early 70s.
Well, you know what's crazy is it's a little bit off the.
And wait, one more thing.
Yeah.
One more. When they were inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in the 90s, Paul McCartney did not show up.
Really? See, I didn't know that either.
Yep. You can go back and George Harrison says everyone that was a part of the Beatles is represented here on this stage.
Really? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Which I didn't know about the professor. If you hear any noise, I get me one of these nicotine lozenges. But I didn't know about the professor, but I did know that DJ, that one DJ you were talking about, what he didn't believe it, and what turned his mind around was that these 20 students at the University of Indiana was researching it. And they're the ones that pointed out most of that cover art, most of the clues on the cover art of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band. But
if any of y'all, want to look it up yourself, it's MSU professor Oscar Oscar Tosi Tosi.
T.O. what?
Tosi.
Oh, I'm going to check that out, TOSI. Cause see, that's one thing. I guess that's one thing you learned in the book that I didn't. But you know what I mean. So I thought I was going to blow your mind with something new. You come up with something new, boy. Ain't you awesome? But now what I was going to say is,
well, like I said, that book turned me on Dead Man. It's cited as the #1 Paul is Dead books, and the author doesn't have a dog in the hunt. He's not trying to get you to believe one thing or the other.
Right, he just give you the information.
Presenting all the information.
Right.
And allowing you to make up your mind.
Right,
like
that's what we're trying to do here. That's what I'm
tons of footnotes and.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do here on Conspiracy Corner. I don't know what to think about it. Usually I would call it BS on most of these.
I don't either.
But on this one, I don't know what to think about it because Paul did just grow a weird mustache out of nowhere for no reason. And you know what I mean?
And their music changed totally.
Well, drugs would do that. So I can understand where they got high. I can understand where they got high.
Would do that.
Right. They all started getting high and eating acid. They went to hang out in India. I could see how that would change their music.
But they were at the height of their career and
right.
totally just
imploded.
Never toured again.
Right, which imploded. But, you know, what I was going to tell you, I'll tell you something else that's crazy. There's a video of it on YouTube. In Paul McCartney's house, his name was something Halliday. In Paul McCartney's childhood home, there's a plaque outside that says Paul McCartney.
I saw that, Billy
right.
Halliday.
And dude's name is Billy Halliday, and he almost looks, he's a doppelganger for Paul McCartney. He looks a hell of a lot like Paul McCartney.
He looks like an old version of Paul. Yeah.
He does. What's the odds of a dude that looks identical almost to Paul McCartney living in his childhood home? That's kind of freaky.
Well, you know, I've read in 2 or 3 of these books that in 65 and 66, they were using body doubles because they were getting injured. And
Right.
they had no, I mean, they couldn't go anywhere.
Oh, I can understand that.
Use these body doubles so they could have a little peace.
Oh, I can see that. You imagine 1,000 girls ripping at your clothes and shit. They'd mess around and pull you to pieces. You know what I mean?
Well, if you think about it, we've never seen anything like that since. Not even the mania over the Beatles.
No, Elvis is the closest thing.
And no British band ever had overtaken the United States because it was really difficult for British bands to become popular.
Right. The British invasion, they were the ones that led the British invasion. They got on the Ed Sullivan Show and blew up. And, you know, that's one of the most iconic TV moments in history, is the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. But here's a little something off on a tangent. Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson made the song Ebony and Ivory. It was a hit. Paul McCartney tells a story where he said he gets a phone call and this real quiet voice goes, "Is this Paul McCartney?" And he's like, "I don't know who's this," because he said, you know, he wants to know who's calling his private number. And he goes, "This is Michael." And he's like, "Michael who?" He said, "Michael Jackson. I was calling to see if you wanted to make some hits." And he's like, "Yeah, sure, I'll make some hits." And they get together and make the song. And Michael Jackson's asking him about career advice, what he should do. And he said, "If I was you, Michael, I would get into publishing." And Michael goes, "One day, I'm going to buy your stuff." And he laughed him off. And then Paul McCartney almost went broke. And Michael Jackson bought the Beatle catalog for like $1.5 billion.
Yeah.
And then Michael Jackson went broke 10 years later. And Paul McCartney bought it back for half price.
Bought it back.
Yeah, for half price. So Paul McCartney put the screws to Mike. But Mike tried to put the screws to him too. You know what I mean? But Paul McCartney came out like a champ on that deal. But, you know, Paul McCartney was in Little Rock not too long ago. You know what I'm saying?
He was a few months ago.
Right. I ain't going to lie to you. I want to lean a little bit. And say that I still believe it's the real Paul McCartney. The only thing
I totally agree with you 100%.
The only thing
I want to believe that.
Right. The only thing that hangs me up is the Heather Mills. But I ain't never seen it unedited.
Well, and the voice thing, too. That's another one.
Right, I have to check that out. Now, if I see that, that might turn me the other way. Because, you know, if people analyze your voice, it is unique like a fingerprint. No two voices are alike like your DNA. You know what I mean? So that would probably turn me between that. But see, if you see the Heather Mills video, it's edited. You know, you can cut it up, chop it up, and have dude ask a question and put an answer in from something else. You know what I mean? So I'd have to see that uncut, but that did freak me out. I ain't gonna lie to you. And I know
another thing that's out there that you've not mentioned was the package that was sent with the last testament of George Harrison.
The what? The package.
It arrived.
It was a package with what in it?
1999 at a studio in California. A package arrived with a London. It was sent from London, but with no return address. And it was a couple of tapes that I've not heard the tapes, but apparently they were printed on the front of it, the last testament of George Harrison, where in a voice.
Oh, I've heard about that.
Harrison,
I've heard about those tapes.
That was killed. Yeah. And the voice says that, you know, Paul McCartney was killed in a car crash in November of '66 and was placed with a British double.
Right. Well, you know,
a guy that looked just like
something else I didn't mention. Paul McCartney allegedly fathered 2 different kids by 2 different mothers before that car crash.
Yes, and one of them he paid child support to until the child turned 18 years old.
Right, and the other one he done a blood test on, and it wasn't Paul McCartney's kid. And
no, and why don't those 2 kids get together and do
DNA
test with each other if
right.
the first one, you know, was from Paul.
Well, right, the first one he settled with. So I'm sure he gave it was a boy and a girl, and it was the girl he settled with. I'm sure he'd probably give her a big old chunk of money, and she signed a non-disclosure agreement.
Yeah, and her birth certificate even says her father was Paul McCartney.
Right, but the big deal is that even though the blood didn't match with the boys, his mama swears that kid is Paul McCartney's. Swears on everything.
She filed like some type of fraud suit.
Right, tried to sue him for fraud, right.
And they did the blood test again, but you know, you have to think that woman truly believed.
Right.
Why would she file a fraud suit and put her kid through that much humiliation and
right.
herself?
And put herself through that type of rigmarole and humiliation. You know what I mean? Because once you put
Yeah.
yourself up to the lawsuit, you got to put your name out there. And then especially, you know, people think the paparazzi, the tabloids are bad over here. It's a known fact that British tabloids are 10 times worse. You know what I mean? Hell,
they're supposed to be ruthless.
right,
over
they
there,
are
man.
ruthless. They caused Prince Diana to have a car crash and die. Then Rupert Murdoch, his paper, got caught hacking cell phones. And remember, they were hacking that cell phone of the dead girls. And they were erasing messages, hoping more
Yeah.
people would call. And the mama thought that it was her still alive erasing messages. And they give the parents hope thinking she was still alive and she wasn't. Which is it was just super cruel. You know what I
That's
mean?
low down right there.
That is super. That's one of the cruelest things I've ever heard somebody do. That would make me go crazy and probably try to kill Rupert Murdoch. You know what I'm saying? But I know you're going to hang out. I know
you don't want to mess. Yeah, you don't want to mess with your dead loved ones. I mean that's
right.
the line you don't
Oh,
cross.
you're right on that. But I know you don't want to hang out because, man, I think you should hang out for the 10 historical perverts because it will blow your mind who's on the list and what makes them perverts. Talking about there's some craziness on there, man, that would blow your mind. But we were going to talk about culture clash. I got a song for that too. Check this out for the next segment. You ready? Which one is it? Culture clash. Anyway, and we were talking, and we didn't know it was Suicide Prevention Week, which it is Suicide Prevention Week. And if you're down and depressed, man, call and get some help. Don't kill yourself. You know what I mean? But the statistics, me and Lisa were talking about how you don't see minorities, blacks killing themselves, or Latino people really killing themselves. It's a white man's thing. It is, and come to find out that it's white middle-aged men exclusively. And the statistics are mind-boggling. Look, I got some stats for you. Arkansas is ranked number 16 in suicides. You know that?
I did not know that.
Right. Look, suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. Each year, 42,000 people, almost 43,000 Americans die by suicide. There's a suicide attempt every 25 seconds. Suicides cost the U.S. government $44 billion annually. Right? On average, there's 117 suicides per day. Firearms account for almost 50% of all suicides. Men die by suicide 3.5 times more often than women. Well, here's the killer. Here's the killer statistic. White males accounted for 7 out of 10 suicides. The rate of suicide is highest among, right, the highest demographic in suicide is white middle-aged men about my age. But it's crazy, you know what I mean? And here's what's crazy. You can go to AFSP.org, and they got a map ranking states by suicide. And it's blue, light blue, medium blue, dark blue. And all the dark blue, this is what's trippy, all the dark blue are states that are pretty mellow states. You would think it'd be more southern states that were big in suicide. And it's not. It's Oklahoma, your Utah's, New Mexico, Colorado, and your Idaho, and your North Dakota, and your Nevada, and Alaska. That's the leading ones. You would figure it'd be down south because of all the heavy drinking and everybody's got a gun. You know what I mean? But that is not the case.
Well, and also too, religion may play a part in that because
right, you kill yourself, you don't get to heaven, right? And we were talking about why do white people kill themselves at such a higher rate than minorities than black people? And man, I read some theories by some psychiatrists and psychologists, and it basically said what I was thinking and what I was saying to you, that because black people, by nature, because institutionalized racism, I don't like that word, tend to be poorer than white folks. They're used to bad stuff happening, so it don't wreck their world as bad as it does a white person. Because a white person usually is wealthier, has more to lose, tends to be financially more secure. You know what I mean? And when something like that happens to them, white folks usually don't have bad stuff happen to them. That's just traumatic like that.
Well, hold on. I have to interject here.
Right,
Because
there's exceptions to the rules.
Black people are only 13% of the population. There's
Right.
more white people. So
Right.
there has to be more white people that are poor than black people.
Right.
So white people know what it's like to be poor.
Oh, yeah.
right?
I'm not saying there's not. I'm not saying there don't. But if you go per capita, black folks beat white folks in being poor. You know what I mean? But you know what I mean? By per capita, by per person, there's more black folks poor, percentage-wise, than white folks. Which is, and Mexicans,
That can never be true if there's only 13% of the population.
Right, but I'm not talking about total population. I'm talking about per person. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, okay.
It says race by ethnicity right here. Let's say the highest suicide rate, 14.7, was among whites, and the second highest was 10.9. And guess who 10.9 was? American Indians, Native Americans. And they're less than 13%. So that means if they're at 10.9, they're killing themselves like it's going out of style. You know what I mean? If you go
well, since we are talking about suicide, I'll interject a little personal story here. When they were bringing my psychotic ex-husband back from Texas,
right?
The two deputies asked him, "Why didn't you just go ahead and kill yourself?" Because normally most white males in the situation that he was in, that just murdered several people,
right, going to get life, possibly death penalty, definitely raped.
Well, it's usually kill yourself. Kill others and kill yourself.
Right.
I mean, very rarely do white males that kill multiple family members not turn the gun on themselves.
Right, unless they're serial killers,
well, he
right.
responded, I can't kill myself because I'll go to hell. And they're like, well, but that doesn't stop you from killing other people? He said, no, I can ask Jesus to forgive me for that. So that's why I always say that a lot of suicides are prevented because people do actually think.
Right, and that makes good sense. I can see how religion would stop you. And I read this theory where the psychiatrist said, majority of people have suicidal thoughts. They just don't have the ability, the balls to actually do it. You know what I mean? It's a big difference to think about it and actually do it. You know what I'm saying? And I ain't gonna lie to you, since we're talking about it, when I was 16, I ain't gonna lie, I tried to kill myself. I tied a towel, since we're sharing, I'll share some personal business with my 14 listeners. I tied a towel around my neck and hung it in the door. And I stepped off that chair, and I thought it was a great idea. As soon as I felt my leg step off that chair, I realized it was the worst idea I ever had in my life. And, man, I had to jerk and pull, and I ripped this door in half, pulling the towel out of it. And I had to break the door, the top half of the door. I don't know how I done it. I put my feet on the door and just give it everything I had, but it gave me rope burns so bad. I only had 3 turtlenecks, and I had to wear them turtlenecks for 2 months. You know what I mean? So nobody asked me why I got rope burns around my neck. But, yeah, I tried to kill myself.
Well,
dumbest thing I ever did.
Let me tell you, I went through a very, very dark.
Oh, I can't imagine the dark place you were in.
I would go down to the graves and I would just lay on them and cry and just beg. And I did take a gun down there one day, and I was just, hell-bent for leather. I'm like, okay, I can't do this anymore. This was before the trial. And I said, I can't, you just can't lose everyone in your house. And, I buried 4 people in the span of a year.
Right, and before real quick,
so
footnote.
my life as I knew it was over.
Right, and a footnote real quick, because some people might not know what you're talking about, Lisa. Will you tell them real quick about what your ex-husband did, Randy?
My ex-husband murdered my mother and my grandparents and shot my brother
9 times.
10 times.
No, 10 times.
Yeah, my brother, no, he shot him 10 times. My brother did live.
Yeah, with AR-15.
You can't even tell he's ever been shot today.
You can't. And Travis is a great dude.
I mean, well, if he goes swimming, you can see all of his scars.
Right, but to be shot 10 times and live is a miracle. He was shot with a high-powered assault rifle. That's a miracle. You know what I mean? But the dude's a psychopath. Lisa being Christian.
No. He was not shot with an AR.
Mini 14?
He was shot with a .40 caliber car.
That's right. He had a pistol and a rifle, right?
He ran out of bullets for the AR for the car because he had 150 rounds, and he walked back over to my house where his truck was at. And he was loading the AR when Tracy Jackson pulled up and he started shooting at Tracy Jackson.
Right, he was a deputy.
Yeah.
For St. Francis County.
At that point, I think a light kind of come on, and he said, "Oh, I better I better shag."
Yeah, I can't believe.
So he left him.
The way cops kill folks, they should have shot and killed his ass. You know what I mean? If I'd have been a cop, I'd have shot him.
I've asked Tracy Jackson that question many times before. I said, with all the guns, he had a street sweeper in there. He had a shotgun that holds 40, 50 rounds.
Yeah, I used to have one of them. Me and Eric had one of them. It shoots 12. It shoots
let me tell you,
12 rounds in 3 seconds.
People think a lot of people will say what they will do when they're in a situation like that. You don't know
No,
until
right.
you're in a situation
Right.
like that.
And luckily,
And because my brother had told me many times, he said the most unnatural thing he had ever done in his life
was try to shoot a human
at another
being.
human. He said it was like it was like trying to breathe underwater.
Right. Something just tells you not to do it. It's instinct. You know what I mean? So that just tells you Randy was a straight sociopath. And you came on a long time ago and told the story, but the story is ridiculous. Dude was living a double life. He was a complete, as you know, sociopath. And Lisa went through.
And I'll tell you a little. I'll tell you. You know, he's continued to get his military retirement.
Yeah, you told me that.
So
That blows my
he's
mind.
He's got like $80,000 up in the bank, and you know.
Yeah, why don't you get a pic?
Pretty much whatever he wants. He just can't leave jail.
Right, which we've talked about that before, and we won't get into details about what we're talking about. But that's amazing that dude still draws money, but he'll never get to spend a dime of it because he's doing life without parole.
No.
Which is
Yeah,
insane.
he's a toe tagger.
Right. Which,
But that was the backstory, and that's why, you know, I went through a very dark time, and I
I
got
can
to the
imagine.
point where I told myself, look, this is going to go one, you know, I'm in control of how I take this situation.
right.
I could have either went down a horrible path and left this earth, but I said, you know, I ain't gonna lie, I prayed continuously because I knew that there had to be a higher power to get me through that than me getting myself through it. You know, I mean, because when you lose everything,
Oh, I can
never
imagine.
knew when I walked, you know, ran out of that house that night that I was never going to be able to go back to sleep in my own bed.
Right. Well, that's a
So,
one in a
I
that's a
mean,
one in
you
a
know,
billion
I had to-
tragedy. You know what I mean? You experience something that probably
Oh,
a handful of
actually
people
have
on
a
earth have
better
ever
chance
experienced.
of winning. You have a better chance of winning the lottery twice. I mean, a multi-million-dollar lottery than having 3 people murdered in your family.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's such a
So it's not
unique
something
tragedy.
that everybody can. Yeah, I remember I would used to seek out people that had that went through that, but of course, you know, you can't
find nobody. Right.
anybody around that's.
Oh, well, you're a strong
back
woman,
to the
Lisa
whole
Reeves.
Suicide thing.
And what stops
I
you?
don't like people saying that.
What? You're a
I
strong
did,
woman. You don't
yeah,
like. You don't like.
I did what I had to do. I
Right.
mean, I'm like, you know what? This is not how I wasn't going to let that man in prison win one more victory from me.
Right. And that would be a win for him if you done that. You know that.
Because
Because that was his main objective, was to kill you to begin with.
And there's some people, let me tell you, you cannot live your life negatively. And I have to fight with that all the time. You know, I do. There's days that, you know, I don't want to get up out of bed.
I bet.
But if you continue to live in the past and think about the past and carry it with you, you're never going to be able to live for today.
Right. That's true. There ain't nothing but baggage in the
Can't do it.
past. You got to look forward.
And
Can't
I
look
realized
back.
quickly, hey, I couldn't do that to my brother and my niece and nephew that they had went through enough.
Right. But religion, too, played a part,
And
like you were
I
saying.
just decided I was going to try to be as positive as I could about life, and if I could help somebody, because you would be surprised how many people I've had come up to me telling me that they got through something just by watching me, and I never even knew I was influencing anybody.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I can imagine. Because they look at their problem looks minuscule to the tragedy you went through. You know what I mean? And you got to think to yourself,
Well, but
if she can make it, I can make it.
everybody's pain is the worst to them, though.
Right. But you are inspirational, though, Lisa.
Everybody's-
You are, though. And you're a positive
I'm
person.
Let me tell you, goofiness and laughter. A lot of people say, why are you always so goofy? Because if I wasn't acting goofy and laughing, I would hate to see what I would be doing.
That goes for me, too. I'm all about goofy and laughing. But I can see how you'd be inspirational because people see the tragedy you went through and they're like, man, my problem don't mean nothing compared to her, the tragedy she went through. She can make it, I can make it. You know what I mean? So I can definitely see how you're inspirational.
Hey, I always tell people, hey, if a chunky girl from Gill, Arkansas can go through what I did, you can go through anything. Because I always considered myself, I'm just an average human. We were a middle-class family, went to church when the doors were open. We didn't get, none of us were ever arrested. We lived life the way we were supposed to.
Right.
We gave to charities, helped out people. And I always thought that stuff like that happened to other people.
Right.
No, it don't. You are the other people.
Right.
That's why I always tell people, appreciate everyone in your life right now. Appreciate everything around you.
Oh, I do.
Because you never know when you or your loved ones are doing something for the last time.
That's right. Oh, you've inspired me. I've been down and feeling blue, especially since I had my back injury. And when I get down and out, I always think, man, if Lisa can do it, I can do it too. I ain't going to lie to you.
Well, let me tell you, I don't listen to anybody. I never know. There could be something fabulous that's going to happen in my life tomorrow.
Right.
That's what's always kept me going. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
That's the great thing about it.
Something horrible can come up and happen, then something great can come up and
That's
happen.
right. You never know. It's, that's why you play the game.
No.
You know what I mean? But it's Suicide Prevention Week, so we done. And like I said, let me real quick before we get off this topic. I was going to give you the stats on minorities. Like I said, the second highest rate is 10.9 among Native Americans and Alaskan Natives. Hispanics is 6.3, Asian and Pacific Islanders 5.9, African Americans the lowest suicide rate of everybody at 5.5. And that's what we're talking about. You don't ever hear about African American or black people killing themselves. You know what I mean?
You don't.
And and it might be because there's so much death in the African American community because of gangbanging and violence and random violence that they appreciate it. You appreciate life so much. Why, and you struggle so much to stay alive. Why would you just end your life like that after you struggled so hard, you made it this far? Why would you give up now? You know what I mean? But
yeah.
But look, I think you should hang out for these top 10 perverts, man, because it is mind blowing.
I will hang out and listen to your top 10 perverts.
Right, it is mind blowing. Look, these are because look here, we're calling the celebrity, or we're celebrity obsessed in America. And we put all these people on a pedestal, and you got to understand these people they're flawed human beings just like everybody else. And I could have went and found celebrities, because there's plenty of perverted celebrities like Eddie Murphy picking up transvestites. Celebrities are easy. Most of them are openly perverted. You know what I mean? These are historical figures. People that made a difference in history. And let me start with number 10. Let me go down here to number 10. But let's see. Because I want to start from the top. Because honorable mention, though, I'm going to give an honorable mention out. And I let it leak earlier. The honorable mention, I got two honorable mentions. One of them is Joseph Smith, the founder of Mormonism. Because that dude had 90 wives. The other honorable mention is Albert Einstein. Yes, Albert Einstein, that dude, the greatest mind of all time. And this is why he's perverted. His first love, let's say he was a long time, he married somebody he knocked up, and when it finally happened, he developed feelings for his cousin, who then he left her for a secretary, who he then left for basically another chick. And it says, but that's one thing he confessed to at the end of his life, that he was an emotional failure, but if you go read up on Albert Einstein, his first wife, he gave her a set of rules that she had to live by. Like every time he'd come home, she'd have dinner ready. She couldn't talk to him unless he told her she could talk to him. They were really oppressive rules, and you would never think that about Albert Einstein. You know what I mean? He seems like a real laid-back cat, but he was really abusive to his wife. But we'll get on to number 10, which shouldn't be a shocker. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Right? And let me tell you why he's perverted. And it says, he had a song, and it was called Lik Mer den Arsch, Fine Rick Sean, Sauber. And the translation is, Lick Me in the Butt Nice and Clean. He wrote a song called Lick Me in the Butt Nice and Clean, which sounds like a rap song nowadays. There's no lie. That was his big perverted. He liked girls to lick his butthole. Right? And it said,
Alrighty.
Right, and he wrote this song, and here's the lyrics.
He shared just a little bit too much, didn't he?
Yes, he did. And here's the first verse of the song. I'm gonna say butt instead of arse. Lick my butt nicely. Lick it nice and clean. Nice and clean, lick my butt. That's a greasy desire. Greasy desire. Ugh. Nicely buttered. Ugh. Like the licking of roast meat. My daily activity. 3 will lick more than 2. Come on, just try it and lick, lick, lick. Everybody lick his own butt himself. And that was the song. Anyway, that was his big deal.
That's a little bit more than I ever wanted to know about him.
Right. I said it ruined you on Mozart. You're like, ugh. Especially when he said greasy desire. You're like, ugh, greasy, ugh. All right. Most people probably won't know who Jean-Jacques Rousseau was. But let me tell you who he was. He was an 18th century philosopher who helped the modern political, sociological, and educational thought system. He's famous because he was responsible for a lot of stuff you learn in college, and most of the philosophy you learn is him and Sartre. Him and Sartre are like the 2 biggest, greatest philosophers ever, in Nietzsche. But he says he wrote an autobiography where he revealed that he could only achieve sexual arousal if he spanked his butt like a child. He says, he who loves well punishes well. Furthermore, he revealed that his indiscretion started off in childhood when he was spanked hard by the head mistress, and he knew then he felt more than affection, and he fell in love with her because she spanked him with a paddle, which is kind of perverted. But he gets better.
So he was like into S&M then.
Right. Oh, we're going to get to him too. We're going to get to the marquee. Okay. Now this dude I know about. Most people ain't going to know who he is. But he's the first rocket scientist ever. He created rocket science as we know it. He was the grandfather of rocket science. His name is John Whiteside Parsons. Before I get into him, the only reason I know about this guy is because I researched L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology a bunch because they were weirdos. And him and L. Ron Hubbard were roommates at one time, and they were buddies with Aleister Crowley, the famous black magic priest who said he was the Antichrist. And they started doing black magic. And they thought they could make it, that they could do black magic ritual and get this chick pregnant and she could give birth to the Antichrist. And once they done the ritual and it didn't go down, and then L. Ron Hubbard went off and made Scientology. That's what most people don't know about L. Ron Hubbard. At one time he was a Satanist, and most people don't know that. Let's say, like I said, he worked to help usher.
And that religion is loony as all get out.
Oh yes, I know he called it a religion. That's a cult. But it says he was the first rocket scientist. He's a mathematical genius. He perfected the power of thrust He perfected the power of thrust. But here's why he's a pervert. And this is when it starts getting weird. To put it shortly, he became involved in a cult initiated by Aleister Crowley. As head of the so-called Agape Lodge, he pioneered not only rocketeering, but the Babylon working, a ritual meant to produce the incarnation of the goddess Babylon. The rituals involved heavy use of sex magic, and Parsons must have gone through a lot of women to find his goddess. It was presided over by L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology, who acted as a scribe before his prophet days. So he met this chick named Marjorie Cameron and deemed her righteous, the product, you know what I mean, the goddess. And they tried to produce a moonchild together, the Antichrist. But a report said the child was pale and had a round face and a horrible complexion. But that's all they said. But so that's kind of perverted. But it gets better. Because look, there's dudes I'm leaving off.
Or did that child grow up to be Sam Neill?
Did it? Oh.
I was joking.
Right. Well, don't get really weird. This is mild till we get to number 5. Number 6 is Henry VIII, right? We know why he's famous because he was the King of England. This is why he's a pervert. He constantly was dissatisfied sexually. He either had the worst possible dumpling method or found the greatest excuse in history to keep sampling women like there were 4 different kinds of sausages. At Costco, dude made a joke. He was never satisfied with any of his wives. Henry ordered them to death if they could not produce a male heir. So if you didn't give birth to a male, he had your head chopped off. And he done that to 6 wives. 6 wives in a row he had beheaded.
I was going to say, he went through several.
Yeah, 6 wives he beheaded because they had daughters. And that is perverted and ruthless. But the good news is he died because from obesity. And this is kind of gross, but this is what killed him. But this is what he gets for being a butthole. From pus-filled bowls that covered his entire body. Ugh. Pus-filled bowls. I mean, that was horrible.
Wow.
You know, that's horrible.
This almost sounds like a gross section instead of a
sexual perverted section. Well, I'm trying to keep it watered down. There's stuff that's really crazy. Like we're going to get to it Well, I take you to James Joyce, the famous writer. He's going to blow your wig off. Number 5 is somebody you would never expect in a million years. Mahatma Gandhi. That's right, Gandhi. The famous,
Really?
the man who created the nonviolent social and political movement. This is why he was a pervert. He took a vow of celibacy at the age of 37. Gandhi practiced the art. And he practiced the art of celibacy and proving that he was strong, and he wouldn't give in to sexual temptation by sleeping naked with young girls. And it says subjects were often his followers. One of them was his own 18-year-old grandniece that he slept with naked. And what they did was non-sexual activity, which included strip teasing, group bathing, and lap dancing. That's what he said. He said they could do all that to him and it wouldn't get him aroused. But guess what they also found out about Gandhi? Gandhi was closeted gay. He had a gay lover. He had a gay lover for many years. Yes, he was gay too. He was bisexual. But this is when it starts getting freaky. James Joyce should be number 1 on this list. I should have made my own list because he'd been number 1. Because what he's into is something I've never heard of, and it's disgusting. This is perverted. Okay, we know James Joyce was. He wrote Portrait of an Artist as a young man, Dubliners, Ulysses, and Finnegan's Wake. One of the greatest writers of the 20th century. He reinvented the writing prose because he done stuff that nobody ever done. Like he wrote a chapter once that was 5 words, and nobody ever done that before. So he reinvented the prose of a writer, a modern day writer. But this is why he's a pervert. He liked to fart in people's faces while having sex. He even wrote really passionate letters about it. We're not going to read the letters, but here's some famous quotes from him. If I gave you a bigger, stronger F word than usual, fat, dirty farts come sputtering out of your backside. You had a butt full of farts that night, darling, and I effed them out of you, big fat fellows, long, windy ones, quick little merry cracks, and a lot of tiny little naughty farties, ending in a long gush from your hole. And he said, that ain't kidding. Look,
That's horrible.
Oh, it gets better. He said, this is what he said about having sex with women. It's wonderful to F a farting woman when every F drives one out of her. I think I would never know Nora's fart anywhere. I think I could pick hers out of a room full of farting women. It's rather a girlish noise, not like the wet, windy fart, which I imagine fat wives have. It's a sudden, dry, and dirty, like what a bold girl would let off for fun in the school dormitory at night. I hope Nora will let off no end of her farts in my face, so that I might know her smell. And he said, needless to say, all high school undergraduates finally. But anyway, he liked to make women fart during sex, and he loved it when they farted in his face, which is one of the most perverted, disgusting things I've ever heard. I didn't know that was possible. You know what I mean?
I'll never look at one of his books the same
Right.
again.
Okay, that dude's a literary genius. And not only that, he had one eye. But he was a literary genius, and he liked women to fart in his face. Who does that? How does that become a turn on? You know what I mean?
It just shows you that everyone is human.
Right, and that's the whole point. That's the whole point of the list. Because our society is so obsessed with celebrity culture, I want to take not celebrities, because these modern day celebrities like Kim Kardashian and folks like that, in 100 years nobody will know who she is. But folks like Mahatma Gandhi and James Joyce, they'll know who they are 1,000 years from now. You know what I mean? These are truly historical figures.
Oh, yeah.
Truly historical figures. And, come to find out, Hitler used to bang his cousins. He married his cousin. And, Hitler was into women urinating on him and playing with poo. Yeah.
Alrighty.
Which I do get a little pleasure thinking about somebody taking a big fat dump on Hitler. You know what I mean? That would be awesome. I might even take. I wouldn't even mind taking a big fat dump on Hitler. I don't think. Number 3.
Well, he's dead now, so
right. Which we might do that conspiracy.
Back in the dirt, he's gone.
Right, we might do that conspiracy because there's a conspiracy that says he didn't die in England. Die in Berlin. He didn't kill himself. That was a body double, and he escaped.
He went off to Argentina.
Yeah, he escaped to Argentina. So that's something else we might do a conspiracy corner coming up. Like I said, thank God there's plenty of conspiracies out there. So
another one that we should do is Skull and Bones.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that. Skull and Bones and secret societies. Yeah, because I was fascinated with Skull and Bones and the Masons and the Bilderbergers for a long time. I'm real adept at that. One time, I had a Mason Bible, and the only way you get a Mason Bible is you're a 360-degree Mason, and when you die, you're supposed to turn it back into the lodge. But I managed to run across a girl, and she gave me a Mason Bible, but because her brother-in-law was a high priest in the OTO, and the OTO was something that also the Aleister Crowley invented, was like a black magic agnostic devil worshiper. And he was a high priest in it.
Well, you know, we have a mutual friend that collects quite a bit of Masonic stuff.
I bet cops love that stuff. Most cops are Masons. So I'm pretty sure.
Todd Gray is. You know,
I know.
Todd Gray was,
I wasn't going to say his name, but I knew who you were talking about.
Years.
Well, I wasn't going to say his name, but I know who you were talking about. But you know, the end of Masonry, when you get up to 360 degrees, guess what you find out? It's devil worshiping too. When you get up on the 360 degree big level, you get that Bible.
You know, I tell Todd he's a goat killer, but you know he takes offense to
Hey,
it.
when you get up to the big level, the national level, the international level, you find out that it's devil worship.
See, I tell him there's a difference between these little local chapters, and then you get way up into the whole.
That's exactly right. Know. Because these local dudes really don't know what's going on. They go to the little rituals, put on their little apron, do their little knock 3 times, the square, and the compass, and the light, and the pyramid, and the all-seeing eye. I know about it. I know all about it. I've seen all the secret rituals. They don't know what's going on. They kick money upstairs. But when you get on that 360-degree level, that national, international level, it's just like Scientology. They reveal to you it's basically Satan worship. And they worship Satan or a pagan god. It's the Egyptian god.
I'm going to stay quiet on that one.
Well, it's not Satan per se, but it's an Egyptian god who was basically their Satan. You know what I mean? And that's the truth. Yeah. I've read the 3.
I don't want my old man to put me in the doghouse.
Right. Well, he can come on. We can talk about it. But the local level's fine. They do good work. They do charitable work. And they don't know about, they don't know what's going on upstairs. You know what I mean? And they're not supposed to.
That's always been my attitude towards
Right.
it.
And they're not supposed to know what's going on upstairs. They keep you in the dark. But let me get these last 3 out. Number 3, the greatest psychoanalyst of all time, Dr. Sigmund Freud. And let me tell you why he was perverted.
Oh, well, I always figured he was
right, because if you ever noticed, his entire philosophy is everything you do, some of it's true. The person you are today is because of what you were as a child. Your experience as a child make you what you are today, which is logical and very believable. And your mother makes a big difference in your life. And we're going to find out why he was so hung up on mothers, about how your mother makes you and molds you into the person you become today. And any phobia or abnormal brain thought you have is because of your mother, the treatment or mistreatment that she gave you. You know what I mean?
I believe that.
All right. And he said he admitted that he had sexual feelings for his mother, and following his work and research, although extremely useful and revolutionary, was basically one long, am I right, guys? But said he turned into, but he conceived the psychosexual theory, identifying 5 key stages of the libido development. And this is what made him a pervert. He was fascinated by juvenile libido development. So he was fascinated by horny kids, what made kids horny, which is kind of twisted. But the 5 stages are, your libido begins at developing at birth. After all, according to Freud, infants are primitive sexual beings. The stages of development are aptly titled the oral, the anal, the phallic, the latency, and the genital stages. As part of the phallic phase, Freud uncovers the subconscious sexual attachment that children have to the parent of the opposite sex, which is true. That's why you got mama's boys and daddy girls. You see what I'm saying? So that makes sense. Naturally, this leads to jealousy and a host of other emotional issues, which then contribute to repressed memories and feelings, ultimately driving up the cost and time of his talking cure sessions, right? So he was a pervert because he was interested in juvenile libido. But somebody I forgot to put on my list was Hans Christian Andersen. And you know why he was a pervert? Because he never had sex in his life. Because he masturbated 5 times a day, but he never had sex in his life. And he would make journal entries about masturbating. He thought it was the greatest thing ever. And all he did was constantly masturbate. And I'm talking about wrote some of the greatest children's books ever. And tell you something else that makes him a sicko. He become one of the first photographers. You know, because photography equipment when it first came out was expensive, but he was a rich author, and he bought one of the first cameras.
Yeah.
And guess what? And I've seen the pictures. Guess what? He took pictures of naked kids, naked, mostly little girls. That's all he would take pictures of. Yeah.
Well, he was a pedophile.
Right. Hans Christian Andersen wrote some of the greatest children's books ever. Was basically a pedophile, but he never had sex with them. He just took pictures of them. And he would visit
like child pornography.
Right, and he would also go visit. He would pull a Jimmy Swaggart. He'd go visit prostitutes and pay them to talk dirty to him. Then he'd go home and masturbate about what they said, which is kind of perverted. That's sick.
That's odd.
That's super odd. All right, number 2. You know who's going to get to it? The Antichrist himself, Mr. 666, Aleister Crowley. And let's see.
That'd be totally believable.
Right. No shocker there. But he was famous because he was a well-known occultist. As a prophet of his new religion, Crowley developed Thelema, a polytheistic religion that ushered in the belief that followers should follow their own true will and neglect their ego. And I've read about him. When he said follow your own true will, he means any impulse you have, you should follow up on it. And that means nothing's immoral. If you have an impulse to rape, you should rape. You have an impulse or a thought to kill, you should kill. You should never go against your thoughts or your impulses. But he became a real life warlock. And he freaked people out. And you know that part of his magic stuff was the basis of the Sherlock Holmes book. Did you know that? Sherlock Holmes is partially based.
Really?
Yeah, partially based on Aleister Crowley. But this is why he's a pervert.
Sherlock Holmes, though,
Was a drug addict. He shot up cocaine.
I mean,
he shot up cocaine.
when were those books first written?
1880s, 1860s. You know, he was a drug addict. He shot up cocaine and morphine.
Yeah.
He was an addict, too. He was a junkie. This is why Aleister Crowley's a pervert.
When did Aleister Crowley die?
It was in the early 1900s, 1930 something.
Okay.
But it said this is why he's a pervert. Crowley not only founded a religion based on magic, he also founded something called sexual magic. And it says, which basically just using orgasms and/or arousal, sometimes fluids, as part of a spell. So he used body fluids as part of a spell, which is disgusting. And it says, here are some great quotes of the sexual magic and how best to go about it. In the new comment to the Book of Law, the B666, quote, the B666 advises that all children should be accustomed from infancy to witness every type of sexual act. Also, the process of birth, lest falsehood fog and mystery stupefy their minds. So he's basically saying every kid, from the time they're old enough to realize what's going on, should see every kind of sexual act there is. And he would expose kids, and they would also...
Well, that's just sick.
Right. He's a sick dude. There's a bunch of stuff he done was sick. But he would use black magic, and he would use kids as part of the spell, and they would molest kids, and they would make kids have sex with adults. It's real twisted and dark. So I'm not going to get to that because it is real. He's a sick dude.
No, because that's a little more than even...
Right. That's all I'm going on that. But it's no shock. It's no shock that which Caligula should be on my list too, because Caligula does so much crazy stuff. He's the one that invented orgies, but he was so bold. He started off Roman, then he got sick and had a head injury, and become the most brutal Roman Caesar of all time. Where he would throw Christians. He was the one that invented throwing Christians in lines, and he would kill people for fun. You could be having dinner with him, and he'd just reach across there, stab you in the neck, and kill you, and think it was hilarious. And he'd also eat parts of your body. He was into cannibalism too. But let me tell you what he done that's crazy and bold. He built a brothel, and guess who he stocked the brothel with? All the senators' wives. So if you were a Roman senator, he took all their wives and put them in a brothel and went and had sex with all of them whenever he wanted to. Which is wild. You know what I mean? Can you imagine the President of the United States building a brothel and putting all the senators' wives in there and just go have sex with them? You know, he would have sex. He got so crazy. he used to bring a horse to parties and would have sex with the horse and then make women have sex with the horse. And then he would be at a party or something, and if he liked your wife, he would just make her have sex right there in front of everybody at the party, in front of you too. He didn't care if that was your wife. And if you said something about it, guess what he done to you? He killed you.
What?
Caligula was ruthless. But of course, the number one is the father of sadism, the Marquis de Sade. You know what I mean? The greatest pervert of all, because he invented S&M. So, you know, the term sadism is based on his name. He came up with the idea of inflicting pleasure, of getting pleasure out of inflicting pain. Masochism is first seen in some of the Sade's more gothic-inclined sexual novels, where, for example, the male character is bound and tormented, but also fondled and develop a kind of attraction to her tormentors. But it's basically torture porn. You know what I mean? But his sexual tales begin with him having an affair with his wife's sister. And then he imprisoned the so-called prostitute for sexual pleasure and he abused her. She escaped from the second floor window and ran away. Then he poisoned 2 manservants with Spanish fly, trying to get them horny so he could have sex with them. But he actually poisoned them. And being a good wife, he had a wife that did join his accomplice in hoarding sexual slaves for him and staffed the castle with young employees of both genders for his pleasure. This guy, this is how he wrote. It says this is how he wrote. He was at the top of the list. This guy didn't have a sex dungeon. He had a freaking sex castle, is what it says. During his life, de Sade was imprisoned or in the insane asylum for 32 years of his life. Due to his prolific... See, that's what's crazy. He'd done all this sexually deviant stuff, and most people wouldn't know about it. But this dude didn't write books and talk about it. So the authorities would come and get him and throw him in jail or put him in the nut house because he would, torture people for sexual pleasure. You know what I mean? And his wife helped him out, which is even sicker. But let's see. Notably, he was in the insane asylum at the time, let's see. He died in 1814. Let's say Napoleon Bonaparte, another pervert, ordered the final arrest of de Sade, but the libertine was able to score one more affair with a 13-year-old for 4 years before he passed. So his last lover was a 13-year-old girl. Notably,
Wow.
And it said his main goal in writings was, quote, to make the most impure tale that has ever been written since the world exists. So basically, he wanted to write the most disgusting, perverted, deviant books anybody's ever written. And they still hold up.
That's something to aspire to, isn't it?
Yeah, ain't it? Boy, I wonder if he was dreaming about that when I was a kid. When I grow up, I'm going to write the most graphic, abusive, disgusting, deviant books anybody's ever seen. You know what I mean? Up here's Charles Dickens. But there's some honorable mentions. I didn't mention Hitler. There's a longer list. Hitler was into women peeing on him and crapping on him, which is disgusting. But,
you did mention Hitler.
Oh, did I? Which is kind of fitting because it's Hitler. Who wouldn't like to take a whiz on Hitler? You know what I mean? Nowadays, you could probably make good money charging people to whiz on Hitler. You could probably become a billionaire. You know what I mean? $100 to piss on Hitler, you could probably make a bunch of money. Especially with the Jewish folks. I'm thinking they'd spend $100 easy to take a whiz on Hitler. But there's all kind of sexual deviance you didn't know, and the reason I wanted to talk about it is because that just shows you some of the... here's another one. Winston Churchill was big about walking around naked. He was naked all the time. And they said the first time he met Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he was in the bathtub naked and made Roosevelt come into the bathroom to meet him, shook his hand, got up, and had a towel around him. When he shook his hand, he used the hand he was holding a towel with, dropped his towel, and shook FDR's hand buck naked. And then on top of it, didn't even bother to pick the towel up. He didn't put the towel back on.
Well,
he
LBJ, would have people...
Who's that?
Come into the bathroom while he was using the bathroom.
Who did?
LBJ.
Oh, yeah. Well, LBJ was big on pulling his penis out because obviously it was supposed to be big, and he thought it would intimidate men. And he was big about pulling out his junk in front of dudes and taking a piss anywhere. Like he would piss in the Oval Office in plants and stuff, which is kind of gross. But yeah, he would make people come in bathroom. LBJ was
Apparently
twisted.
He had no reverence for the Oval Office.
No, he didn't. And they always give Kennedy crap because Kennedy liked the ladies. But if they just knew some of the twisted, murderous crap LBJ did. LBJ was, other than the Civil Rights Act, and he did that just to save himself politically because he was a racist. He was a hardcore racist.
Yeah, because he did not want to do it.
No, I've actually heard him. I've actually heard tape of him saying the N-word openly and calling.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go back and there's where he's talking to RFK. You can go on YouTube and they have a lot of his recordings. LBJ.
Oh yeah, I've heard him talk. I've heard him.
He's almost as bad as Nixon.
Right, I've heard him hang up the phone with Martin Luther King and they call him the N-word. You know, half a dozen times, man.
They had so much. They had so much junk on Martin Luther King, though. You know, a lot of people don't talk about it. Martin Luther King was a big womanizer too.
Well, he could, but we're all human. Who, you know what I mean? You got to understand. If you're at that height of power and you got hot chicks throwing themselves at you constantly, you know how hard it would be to say no. Maybe one or two times it's easy, but if it happens every day, you got chicks throwing themselves at you. Basically, any chick you meet, you could probably have sex with. You know how hard it would be not to abuse that as a man?
Well, you would expect a little more, though, from a reverend.
Not really. If you ever notice, most reverends are big womanizers. Come on now. I know your daddy was a preacher and he wasn't that tight, but
No.
But most
He
reverends,
wield a lot of power out.
but most reverends tend to be authority figures who abuse their authority
Well, you know,
and bang their
you're
congregants.
correct. Let's look at Jimmy Swagger, Baker. What's that guy's that the Baker guy?
Oh hell, all of them. Benny Hinn.
It's awful.
Jim Baker,
These people,
Jimmy Swagger, all of them.
the houses. Have you ever seen the houses these guys live in?
Them are not houses. Them are parsonages.
Why don't they live in a normal house and then give all the millions that their mansions cost to like homeless shelters or something?
Well, that would make them actual real preachers and Christians, and that's something they're not. They're scam artists like Donald Trump who's just scripting people for money. You know what I mean?
What's that big preacher in Dallas that bought the old
Joe Osteen?
the Astrodome?
Joe Osteen?
Yeah, I don't like him.
Or T.D. Jakes. All those cats, and I'm not a religious guy, but I know the Bible well. They teach that one chick, I forget her name, that all the women love, the old lady, and Paula White. They all teach prosperity gospel.
Yeah, I
which
know
is
you're
something
talking
that's not
about.
in
It's
the
her
Bible.
name.
There's one thing Jesus was hardcore against, and that was wealth. He was hardcore against rich people. He couldn't make it no
He said
clearer
it was easier to get a camel
through an eye of a needle than a
rich
rich man passed through the gates of heaven. It gets no more plainer than that. He basically says if you're rich, you're not going to heaven.
Look, when you get that amount of money, you think that you don't have to serve anyone. You serve yourself.
Right. Well, he said also take all your money and give it to the poor, quote unquote. People don't realize Jesus Christ was basically a socialist. He had a bunch of socialist tendencies about spreading the wealth, making sure everybody had an even shot, making sure everybody had what they needed, helping the poor, the
If your
least
brother
among us.
asks for your cloak, give it to him.
Right, helping the least, how you treat the least among you is how you treat me. You look at all his quotes, but that's why you trip on all these rich preachers. If you see a preacher at money, you're looking at a preacher that ain't going to heaven. I'm sorry. That's the truth. A real preacher is a modest, humble, probably poor-ass dude. I got two uncles that were preachers, and both them dudes were poor. So I know they was the real deal. You know what I mean? They didn't have flashy nothing. You know what I'm saying? They was like your daddy at these little bitty country churches preaching. Your Mark Trees,
Oh, yeah.
stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Well, and, you know, my dad really didn't even, you know, he had his construction business, so he didn't
Right.
live off his, I think he got paid maybe $200 a week. Preaching.
Right. But you laugh.
So really, it wasn't for the money.
But you laugh when you see these guys call these mansions parsonages so they don't have to pay taxes on them. They don't pay taxes on none of those mansions.
Oh, yeah.
Or their jets.
You ought to go online and see Joel Osteen's mansion. I mean, it's insane.
Man, tell you who, you think he's insane. What's that chick's name that everybody likes? The old chick. Oh,
The
man.
dark hair, short dark hair.
Yeah. What is her name? Let me see if I can find out real quick. Because she has not only built a mansion that is unbelievable. Oh, there she is. Joyce, what's her name?
Joyce Meyer.
Joyce Myers. She's not only built a $15, $20 million parsonage, but every one of her kids have built multi-million dollar houses right next door to her. She's got like 3 or 4 kids, and she's built all of them multi-million dollar houses. So they got their own neighborhood of multi-million dollar mansions. And of course,
I always say the scariest words in the Bible is, depart from me, you worker of iniquity. I do not know you. And the guy sits up there and says, but I cast out demons in your name, and I did all this in your name. I always said that there's a lot of people sitting in the church house that are going to be truly shocked on the day of judgment.
About 90% of them is going to be truly shocked. But all these cats, man, your Benny Hinn's, and that one dude that owns the TBN channel, the purple-haired lady, her dad, husband just died, Paul, what's his face? All these dudes are grifters. You can go on YouTube and you can see videos of some of them getting busted out. Like, where they would call out, there's somebody out here, and they do cold calling, what psychics do, which is nothing but making people answer questions for them. They'll say, somebody's got a stomach ache out here. Well, you're in a crowd of 10,000 people. There's probably going to be a bunch of people with stomach aches. You know what I mean? And one of them will raise your hand, and then you hear them just start guessing. It's intestinal problems. The dude's like, no, it's not intestinal problems. It's a tumor. Yeah, it's a tumor. And they'll just guess and make you answer the questions for them, and then they'll lay hands on you and want that $500. Or they want $1,000 for you to pray for them. And you can go on YouTube, and there's been reporters who's busted these cats out, and these cats will go away for a while, and then they'll come back and people will give money for again. I saw one preacher brag that he had cash money to buy a jet, and a month later he had enough money to buy 2 more jets that were bigger with cash money. And he said he needed them jets like Creflo Dollar when he tried to get his congregation to raise $64 million because his jet was raggedy. His jet now was raggedy, and he needed a new one. And he could to preach the word, and they went and looked at his logs, just like another dude, old Kenneth, what's his face? They went and looked at their logs, and they're they're going on ski trips and everything else. They're not going to preach. They're going on all these exotic vacations and stuff. And then this one dude goes up on his property and tries to bust him out. And Kenneth, what's his face, has his own security force that rides around his house. And this dude just wanted to go look at his house. Security force shows up, calls the cops, and they take this reporter to jail. You know what I mean? But they're all con artists.
Yeah.
Real preachers don't have mega churches.
I hate to leave you.
Yeah, I'm supposed to get off here because we're at 90 minutes. And like I said, we've covered all 3 topics. You know what I'm saying? And next week, I'm having Bart Rankin on here. He's a physical therapist who's got some awesome stories. And he's wicked. He's a wicked, funny, smart-ass dude who lives out in California. Because, that's my big thing. I try to interview people that's got a different life story, that's got a unique job and does something different. And me and you are going to knock out, since you're executive producer, knock out crazy conspiracies. And thank God for Alex Jones. As long as that dude's alive, we'll never run out of stuff to talk about. But it's been nice talking. Right, it's been nice talking to you, Lisa. Hello?
All right, appreciate it, man. See you next time.
All right, man. Have a good one. All right, like I said, we've knocked them all out. We've knocked out McCartney. I told you about 10 historical perverts. But I have to say James Joyce might have been the most perverted of all. I can't imagine having women flatulate in your face. Ugh. Or anybody flatulate in your face. There's something seriously wrong with that dude, but man, he can write. And we've knocked out that, and then we knocked out suicide at Suicide Prevention Week. If you're down and out, you're feeling alone, call somebody, man. Call for help. Man, it can always get better tomorrow. There's always tomorrow. You're never at the end of your rope. Don't kill yourself. Life is too precious. So if you're feeling suicidal, you're listening to this, listen to Ronnie. Call somebody, get some help, man. Because life's too precious. You only get one ride around on this roller coaster. Don't waste it. This Shoot Your Breeze with your man, Byron A. Lloyd. And I'm Audi 5000.